folks, Barry here from Make It So Adult Fitness in Long Beach, talking today about training with resistance bands and how to increase the amount of resistance that you're working with. In Greek mythology, there was a guy that we take lesson from in the fitness world called Milo of Croton. When Milo was a small child, so goes the legend, his father gave him a baby calf, but he was charged with the responsibility of carrying that calf with him everywhere he went. Typically, he'd put the calf up over his neck with the calf's legs hanging down over his shoulders. Of course, calves grow. So did Milo. As the calf grew, it got heavier. Milo adapted by becoming stronger. So the bigger and heavier the calf grew, the stronger Milo became, until he became the strongest man in the entire land. It's a true story. Some of you will remember the actual time that it happened. Just kidding. Training with weights, training with resistance bands, we applied the principle of progressive resistance training. Progressive, root word progress. And the way that works, we talked earlier about muscles being dumb and muscles being lazy. This has to do more with muscles being lazy and not wanting to work any harder than they have to. So if you take a task and you task muscles with completing a task that it can do, but it finds difficult, well, it can do the task. But if it discovers that you're going to keep expecting it to perform the same task, it's going to respond by getting stronger, so it doesn't have to work as hard and go back to being lazy. With the principle of progressive resistance training, once your muscles have adapted by becoming stronger, then you slightly increase the amount of weight or the amount of resistance, so there's a new challenge, a new load for your muscles to adapt to. So that's how you improve your strength. If you were doing it with weights, you would just go up to the next heavier weight once you were able to handle the one that you were working with that you originally found to be hard. With resistance bands, the bands come in different sizes. Now, these bands are all 41 inches long, and they're all 500 millimeters thick. So what's different is the width of the bands. The wider the band, the more resistance. So if we start with this orange band, which is a light band, that's not a lot of resistance, depending on what your starting level of strength is. If you're just starting out, this is a fair amount of resistance. It's enough to accomplish what's called a training effect or positive response. But you keep doing it, and your muscles will adapt to that amount of resistance, and it won't be working very hard anymore, so there's not going to be any further improvement. So what you can do, you can either, because it's the same resistance, if you were doing, let's say, 10 repetitions, 1, 2, 10, that's trainer math, don't try to figure it out. So you can go from doing 10 repetitions to 1, 2, 12. Once you can do 12 without it being too challenging, move it up to 15. So that's one way, just increase the number of repetitions using the same band or the same amount of resistance. The other way is move up to the next bigger band. Now we're doing the same exercise, but now we finished with 15. with the orange band, because that's what we had adapted and progressed to, you're not going to be able to do 15 when you're first starting with the red band. It's too much, but you can do it. So all's going to happen is what happened before. Over time, your muscles will become stronger, so they can go back to it not being very hard. So you'll go from 10, 12, 15. Then you'll move up to the next bigger band. Again, I'm pointing out that this black band is wider than the red band. Everything else is the same. 41 inches long, 500 millimeters thick. Eventually you end up at the purple band. By the time you can do 15 repetitions of a shoulder press or an overhead press with a purple band, you are pretty strong. So that's one way. Just change the band, move up to the next band on the order of resistance. But suppose you don't have all these bands. Does that mean that you can't improve your strength after your muscles have adapted to your present workload? Of course you can. Here's how you would do it. Notice, let's go back to let's say this is the only band you have, this orange band. And this is how we started. Put our elbows in, and we performed our repetitions. But notice the band is on the back of my arms. So it's getting just a little bit of a free ride on the back of my arms. Suppose I didn't have my arms in and I just took it on my thumbs. The same band that you had no problem doing 15 now becomes a lot harder doing it like this. Again, same band, same exercise, except instead of doing this, you're doing this. And you can do the same thing, elbows in, switching over to elbows out with each of the bands. What else can you do? You can take a band that you normally would do, let's say, a row for your back, where you would hold it like this and go like that. Now, after you've worked up to a higher number of repetitions using the same band, you can either move up to the next band or take the same band, fold it in half, so if it's half the length, then it's double the resistance. That's a lot harder than that. It's the same principle if you're using an attachment. This is a typical band attachment. They come in different kind of configurations, but they're all basically the same thing. They're a loop that you thread the band through, a piece of length, and then a stopper so that you can stick it in your door, close the door, and that stopper stops it from pulling through. And with this, you can adjust it high, middle, a little lower, all the way down. So let's put it right here. So this will be the same principle that we just talked about. So you're going to do a chest press. I've got the band here in the back of my arm, and I'm stepping out with one foot, and I'm leaning. I'm leaning so if I stood up straight and did it, the band's going to try to snap me back. So now I'm just kind of reallocating my tipping point, and I'm going to press out. And I'll start with 10 repetitions. And then I'll keep periodically increasing. I'll go to 12 repetitions. Maybe by the end of the week, I'll be doing 15. At that point, I'll switch from the orange band over to the red band. But again, same scenario, you only have one band. You only have the orange band. So just like we switched over with the shoulder press from the band being behind the arms, getting a partial free ride, to hooking it on the thumbs and coming up front. We'll do the same thing here. So instead of the band on the back of my arm, and now it's on the flat part of my palm, I'm going to hook it on my thumb, and now the band is under my arm. No free ride for this band. Same band, same exercise, more resistance, more difficult to do. Just like with the row, with the band, we're folding it in half, we can do the same thing. Now that's a lot more resistance than using the same band, but using it full length instead of folded in half. You can do similar adjustments. Let's say you're doing hammer curls. Step on. Spread your hands so they're kind of on the outside of your thighs. Put your thumbs on top. Stand tall and come up like this. Classic hammer curl. Call it a hammer curl because it's just like if you're holding a hammer. Okay, now it's the only band you have, and you want to increase the resistance. And you've already worked up from 10 repetitions, 12, now you're past 15, and you want to still increase your strength. Let's do this. Instead of bringing your hands to the outside of your thighs, bring them much further out. Now you've done what's called preloading. You put some stretch on the band before you even start the exercise. Oh, that's a lot harder. You can do the same thing with all of the other bands. Let's say you want to do a chest press. One band, that's all you got. You'll step on the band, put the band flat on the floor so you don't get your feet all tripped up trying to get through. Step through, spread your hands, elbows in, lean, and chest press. Okay. Again, you've worked your way up to the end of the repetition range that you want to be working at, but you want to still be adding resistance. Let's do this. Let's take the band, put a knot in it. Now, look what has happened to the length. We've shortened the band by that much. The shorter the band, the more resistance. Same idea if you take a rubber band. That's a lot harder to do than that is. That's harder than that. So let's do this. Hook it on your thumbs, put it around your back. Put it around your back. Same thing with a row. By the way, here's a little trick. When you knot a band like this, when you're done with your exercise, undo the knot. If you leave the knot in, remember, this is stretchy, so it's always going to be wanting to return to its regular length. What you're going to find is a knot that's not real tight when you're done your exercise, you come back to it a couple days later, it's really going to be hard to undo. You ever have like a necklace chain and it gets all knotted up and you spend hours trying to undo it? Do the same thing, by the way, with a band if that ever happens. Where the knot is, put just a couple drops of olive oil. Kind of move it around. Now you've lubricated it. It'll be easier to undo. You can do that again with any of the other bands. So as you can see, even if you're limited to one single band, and by the way, it's the same thing with the flat bands. Like this, where you can grab it down lower, same band, same exercise, that's harder. That's hard. Stretch it out a little bit. That's harder. Same thing with all the exercises that we just did with the continuous loop band, you can do with a flat band, and you can adjust the amount of resistance the same way. So that's how you get by if you only have one band or a couple bands, but you want to keep increasing the resistance so you can continue improving like Milo or Croton. My time is up. I thank you for yours.